Datapath. Excellence by design.
First of all, welcome everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, very much and a warm welcome to Datapath in Derby. I'm very pleased to see so many customers here and our partners as well, for that matter, software partners. And I notice we have people from all over Europe here, from southern Spain to northern Sweden, from Western Ireland to eastern Romania. So we've got a very good coverage from Europe here today, and a very warm welcome to you all. I know you made an effort to come here, some a great deal, getting up very early this morning or even coming here yesterday, and an effort is appreciated by us, and we hope we can repay you in kind by providing a good show today and giving you a good overview of our products and our launch, new product launch today. I'd like to talk you through the program for today. I'm going to start making a short presentation here and start twitching around if I become too long-winded. It's not intentional, but we do get carried away easily at Datapath with the things we love to do. So I'm going to spend hopefully less than half an hour here. At 1 o'clock, we start the demonstrations and the tour. And we've got 5 demonstrations and a tour around the building where we'll talk about more about products and technology as well. And we've split you into groups, and you'll notice that in your name tags. I'll come back to that, but you'll be split into groups, and we'll organize that at the end of my presentation. There will be 6 of them, 5 demonstrations and a tour, and with a break at 2:30 in between for half an hour. So we can catch up, because I don't think this might go perfectly to time, but we can catch up there, and also for a few emails and technical breaks and things like that. At 4:30 or thereabouts, if we congregate here, those that have got any questions and so forth, and we can outline the directions as we move on. For those who are joining us for dinner tonight, we'll try to get you to see what Derby has to offer, the best Derby has to offer, and my favorite place as well. And then tomorrow, of course, there's training sessions for those who are here tomorrow as well. So again, warm welcome to you all. Before I move on, though, a little bit of housekeeping, or 2 points. Nigel's been kind enough to guarantee no fire alarm drills today, right? So if the fire alarm goes off, it's likely to be for real, or at least a minor technical glitch we have to sort out. It hasn't happened so far. If it does happen, follow your tour guides and the Datapath people. They generally have got black polos on with Datapath, so they should be pretty obvious. Follow them down the stairwells, and we'll congregate out on the grass lawn over at the other end of the parking lot that way. And the other technicality you should be aware of is the toilets, restrooms. There is one set down there. Follow the corridor down there to the right. It's signposted. Likewise, down to the right where the green emergency exit sign is, through the demo room, and down to the left. There is more there as well. With that, let's get started. I promised a brief overview of Datapath, and let's make a brief overview of Datapath. We've been in the video wall display business for the last 15 years. That's been the key of what we've been doing. But Datapath has been around longer than that. Datapath was formed in 1982. And today we've got a pretty loyal team, and lots of the staff has been here for quite a long time, and we're very pleased with that. It's great for the company to have that stability. We're today a little bit over 100 staff, and we've grown quite a bit in the last few years, but nevertheless, the experience and the loyal team is a key asset to us. We're also expanding quite a bit in international these days. We've got our headquarters here. All the R&D is done here in Derby, and most of the people. But we're now an increasingly big presence in the US with a sales and support office in Philadelphia, and people in other places, in as far-flung places as Montreal in Canada as well. And we also got the same situation elsewhere. Brian obviously is here, who lives and works out of Paris, as you know, and we've got people in Shanghai, Tokyo, and other places, and we're likely to have a more formal place in Asia later, perhaps not this year, but next, as we move on. Our core product ranges, and I'm sure most of you know pretty well, but I repeat, complete display controllers and the components for them, which we sell to some OEM customers, of course, but the complete systems are increasing, and the components for them is decreasing in sales, really. We do capture cards in several markets, and Obviously, the display controllers goes into the control room markets. We also do a lot in digital signage. Capture cards, mainly, or I shouldn't say mainly, some of the key areas where they get used is into medical operating rooms, into lecture capture is another big area where we sell a lot of capture cards, and I'm sure many of you have seen sales into that area as well. Live events, another big market for us, not only in capture cards, we also sell a lot of the X4 and multi-display products out there. And I'm pleased to hear that not only do we get used at such shining events as Coldplay at Glastonbury, where we had 8 cards going and 4 media servers, but we apparently got a big presence in all the dance music scene with all the DJs as well, with a lot of X4. So I wished I got out to see more of that myself. Finally, on the sales side of things, in the last 12 months, we've sold to direct customers in 62 countries. But pretty much through our partners, I think we get coverage in just about every country in the world. There is some we possibly don't really want to be in, but nevertheless, everywhere else, I think we've got a pretty good presence. So that's Datapath today, and I hope the tour later on will give you a good overview on what we're doing here. We've been in this office for 3 years today, and it's still pretty good shape. Finally, before I move on, I'm saying that we, in the past year or so, we have thought of what the motto and what the strengths of the company is, and well, we do display controllers, capture cards, is all quite a variety of things we do with them. But I think the thing that brings them together is visual solutions, and given that we've got a pretty good presence in that market, we like to think that we're actually engineering some of the world's best solutions. And that's what our motto is these days as well. Now, that has hopefully been true in the past, it's hopefully true today, and we're certainly going to make every effort to make it true in the future as well. Now, from that, let's move on to control room market. Now, this has really been the bread and butter for Datapath over the last 15 years, and a variety of types of installations. Many of you probably recognize these kind of environments with seismological center in Brazil up to the top left, and we've got a bus operating company's headquarters down right in Malaysia, and various other things here. This market is about 4,000 control rooms around the world is being installed every year. We like to think we've got 20 to 25% market share in this market. It's not particularly growing. There is probably 4,000 control rooms being done every year. They get replaced every 7 years, and that makes it 28, 30,000 control rooms around the world. Great business for us, and we like to stay there, and we're certainly going to do that. But that's perhaps not where the interest is these days. It's moving on. Before I get onto that, though, the control room market has got some particular features which is worth mentioning. Control rooms are generally, in terms of number of screens, getting smaller. And perhaps 4K is going to get there, which means the number of pixels are perhaps the same. But the video walls for control rooms are generally not getting bigger. And with the collapse of the Chinese market a few years ago, where people were competing getting the biggest system in, that's not happening. We've seen a sort of dramatic decrease in requirements for bigger systems these days. Operator desks are getting more complex, more displays, and more information is carried on the displays for the operator desks. That means that more networking of video is required in these environments, and we've been investing quite a bit in our SQX technology for networked video over the past few years to support that. That's going very well, and we're obviously going to show the SQX technology here today in a great deal, but it's not really what we're trying to launch today and show you the emphasis of today's launches. Another feature of electronics and this market is, of course, that electronics always get smaller. You can do more with CPUs, GPUs, electronics as you go. And these systems are becoming smaller and smaller, and it gives us the opportunity to move away from traditional form factors of display controllers, as we will show you in a second. So that's the control room market. Reliability is obviously everything, right? And a fairly steady place, and there is some changes there, but there is more interesting things happening elsewhere. And it's interesting to note, perhaps, that of all the controllers we sell, we figure that about half of them is not going into control rooms these days. They're going into quite different types of environments, digital signage and boardrooms and fancy outfits like that. And I think this last bottom left picture is, which I'm pleased to have taken myself, actually, which is probably why it's not terribly sharp. But nevertheless, this is athlete lab in London, and beyond being a bunch of cyclists there, which I sort of warm to, it's an interesting place. You run a video wall in front. You can see how you're competing with the other people in there. And there is an American software company whose name escapes me at the moment that does the application for this. I'm sure there's many other types of applications similar that's being proposed for this market. And clearly, this is developing in all kinds of directions at the moment. This market, if you look at the research from people like Display Search and so forth, is growing quite significantly, 15, 20, or 20, 25, 30% a year currently, i.e. narrow bezel LCD displays that's going into these kind of environments. Given that control rooms aren't growing, the growth must be somewhere else. Basically, everyone wants a video wall. Now, to serve this market, one of the characteristics here is clearly that there is no equipment room next door here in many of these installations, right? Space might be at a premium, and we think actually a smaller controller is quite helpful in this kind of environment. And there's a different set of requirements for those environments as well, which I'll come into more in a second. So before I go into exactly our controllers, I think the thing that we're trying to appeal to a different market with these commercial applications is something that we want to highlight through launching a new brand, and that's essentially what we're doing today as well today. It's not a company brand, of course, it's a product brand for a new range of controllers. And we wouldn't do that if it were simply for one product that we're here to show you today. It's a vision really on how we see the market unfolding over the years to come. And there's a promise that we're actually going to satisfy and build that brand with a number of products to arouse interest in the market and appeal to a different customer group than perhaps has been our traditional customer group. And I think most of you are true representatives of how we take those products to that market. It's not through the people we have been mainly selling controllers to in the past, the OEM companies, but through distribution and through system integrators into a broader AV market, basically. So let me move on to the brand. Our new iolite brand is what we launched today. It should be seen as the platform for display controllers, for commercial markets, for collaboration, for signage, and so forth. It puts features and function and cost efficiency, accessibility on top of the priority list. And it's not about reliability, it's not about quality. That's key that we continue to do our good quality as well, of course. But it's not, as in the control room market, the highlight of that brand. And we want to make it easier to access for distribution and system integrators and customers alike. And when I'm saying that, it means different things to the different stakeholders here. Easier to access for distributors by shortening lead times. Easier to access for system integrators by making the product easier to handle, providing better tools for it. And easier to access for customers by making the user interfaces more natural and easier to work with. And I hope we can show you some of that in each category today in the different demonstrations later today. Moving on to the first product, which is the iolite 600. And we like to think that this little box here is compact, yes it is, but it's still very powerful. It's cool and quiet, because most of these environments, we have had lots of discussions over the past years about fan noise, and clearly you'll have to look very hard to find it today. If Nigel can turn off the air condition, you might give it a real test, but... No. It still offers plenty of inputs and outputs, up to 24 in and outputs in a system like this, and that's the current launch. We think that will go a little bit higher in due course, but for now with the iolite 600. And to make it accessible, we also will offer this in a number of fixed configurations that can be made available with very short lead time. More about that in a second. So looking at some of the key features of this product, I said it's powerful. Yes, it is. This is as powerful as our VSN 970, which is the mainstay of our controllers for the control room today. It offers a backplane PCI Express with six slots with 8 lanes, PCI Gen 2. But since there's 8 lanes per slot, the bandwidth throughput is the same as on a VSN 970. And does give you full performance out of our image DP4 and most of our capture cards as well. all our capture cards as well. It comes standard with the Core i5 processor, 8 gigabytes of RAM, and 240 gigabytes of an SSD drive, but there is several upgrade options for Core i7 and bigger drives and memory and so forth as well. It's got an ATX 250 watt power supply, which is quite sufficient to fill it with any card we have in the range today, and makes it quiet, which is a key feature. And as you can see, the size is pretty small compared to what a full rack mount VSN 970 system is, which makes it easier for many installations. You can put that on a desktop, or you can put that in a small cabinet, small desk cabinet if need be. Looking at the different models, and as I said, the basic model, the iolite 600-100, which is the base model, you can order that with a variety of cards, and we build it for you as we do with the other systems with 10-day delivery time. But we will also make this available in four fixed configurations, 101 to 104 for 4 to 16 outputs, and there is a capture card with 4 inputs in all of those configurations as well. And should we find that there is a need for other configurations and high volume of them, we will of course adjust accordingly. Possible versions is easy to imagine here, so we'll see how we go forward, and I'm sure this will be more of this in the years to come. Now, I talked, this is the iolite 600, right? And I talked a great deal about this. As I said, we're not launching the iolite brand just because of the iolite 600, but we think that there is a... I think
the last point there you should state as well for the pre-configured.
Yes, yes. They are pre-configured, will be available for next day shipment, basically, when we launch this. Well, coming back to the iolite brand, as I said, we're not launching this just because of this model, and we wouldn't go to that length if it was just a single model. And we're pleased enough to be able to show you a preview of the iolite 200, which is the next installment in the series. This is a display controller with a fixed 12 outputs, HD, or alternatively 3 4K outputs. You can trade one for the other. As the team will show you, be able to tell you later when you see it. It will be a stop on the tour around the facilities. You'll see it in operation. It's up in the lab operating as it should, prototype. There's 2 PCI Express slots, so you can put additional capture or active SQX cards in there for network acceleration or for video capture. And we like to think it's as cool and quiet and versatile as the other in the range as well. Certainly cool, much the same principle applies to this. And again, you'll see in the demonstrations how we've achieved this, basically getting it to be under almost all circumstances completely quiet. This comes in a few fixed configurations, and again, you can get it with any card we have in the huge capture card range we offer today, or active SQX cards and so forth in custom builds as well. And we expect to launch this in Q1. You should expect to see it for launch, a full launch at IC in February in Amsterdam, for those who are going. Now, as I said before, the new small range is not only for the commercial range. We're also thinking that we can extend the control room product with this range, and therefore we're also launching the VSN Micro 600. Now, they are square, they're remarkably similar from the outside, but it's quite, when I actually thought about it earlier, there is not all that many things that's the same in them. There is different backplanes, different motherboards, and all the key components are essentially different in them to make a quite different product to meet the requirements of different markets. I like to say compact reliability probably captures pretty well what we're trying to do here. One of the key features here is that this is built on industrial motherboards from the PC technology area, which means that we expect this to be available for a long time. You should expect to be able to buy this in 3-4 years, exactly the same product code. Just like we're still selling the VSN 800, the VSN 870, which has both of them been superseded, and also those were 2 different generations of products, and we've got the VSN 970. And so we're currently selling 3 different generations of VSN 900 systems. Like for the VSN Micro, we should expect that to be the case as well. Tony and Simon in the operations team might not necessarily prefer it, but control rooms customers like it that way, right? Some customers want to roll out over a large number of shops, and then they want, or installations, and then they want to replace them and have exactly the same kit because they've got 10 controllers all exactly the same, and one needs to be replaced or extended, right? Maximum performance, almost as cool and reliable, well, as cool as reliable and almost as quiet as the iolite product range here. Same 24 inputs and outputs, and comes in custom configurations. A little bit more about the technical detail here. I said an industrial motherboard for long-term availability. This has got a PCI Express 6-slot 8 lanes backplane Gen 3, so kind of future-proof for some upgrades coming in the future. It comes both with a redundant power supply, RPSU 500 watts, and with a ATX power supply 500 watts. It's got the same basic configuration, CPU, memory, and hard drives as the iolite, and it comes with the same set of upgrade options, but for the VSN Micro 600 range, it also comes with a Xeon processor, option. That satisfies those who are looking for specmanship, and in certain very few cases where it really makes sense as well, I'm sure. The consequence of the bigger power supply is also that the box is somewhat bigger, as a close observation between the two chassis here will show. That's about half an inch wider and about 2.5 inches longer than the iolite 600. I'd like to move on to availability, and with a lot of different components coming together and launched, we will be able to start to ship the iolite 600 with Wall Control 10 standard, and you'll learn all about the different versions, some about the different versions of Wall Control in one of the demonstrations a little bit later. That will be available the week commencing October 17th, in about 4 weeks' time. Wall Control 10 with the Pro version a couple of weeks later, and we expect to be able to get the next day shipment rolling during November. I refused to, well, I changed my mind to put a date in there because it obviously depends a little bit on the launch volumes, and bringing all these components together at the right time, at the right place is a bit of a logistical exercise. And finally, the VSN Micro 600 in all versions should be available by mid-November. That is pretty much it. We've got a lot of demonstrations this afternoon, and I will go into a little bit of how we organize those. There is 5 demonstrations. The Datapath controllers and technology starts out in the boardroom to my right. Number 2, the Wall Control software by Matt and Roger in the demo room, which is further over in that corner. We've got our partners here, Logic, Polywall and Wavestore. And as I said, I'm sure they will speak very well and highly competently about their products. We've got Logic in Moorland conference room down that corridor, as is Polywall and Wavestore in the respective meeting rooms down in that corridor. And the tour, which is kind of the 6th demonstration, if you put it that way.
Datapath. Excellence by design.